The Kremlin recently granted access to Tucker Carlson, a figure known for his provocative stances in the American media landscape, a unique opportunity to interview Russian President Vladimir Putin. The interview took place on February 7, 2024 in Moscow. It was the first time that Putin had spoken to a Western journalist since the invasion of Ukraine. The interview covered a wide range of topics, including the war in Ukraine, relations between the US and Russia, and Putin's view on a number of other issues. Putin defended his decision to invade Ukraine, saying that it was necessary to protect the security of Russia. However, the president also accused the US of provoking the conflict. The interview has been met with mixed reactions. Some have praised Carlson for giving Putin a platform to express his views, while others have criticized him for giving a mouthpiece to a dictator. The interview has also been accused of being one-sided, with Carlson failing to ask Putin tough questions about his actions in Ukraine. But should this interview have ever taken place? Welcome to the Global Insight. This interview represented Putin's first engagement with Western media since the onset of the Ukraine conflict 2 years ago. The choice of Carlson, a former Fox News host known for his pro-American perspective, was explained by Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov as a departure from the one-sided narrative often presented by traditional Western news outlets. Peskov criticized Western media for their lack of impartiality, contrasting it with Carlson's unique stance, which he characterized as neither pro-Russian nor pro-Ukrainian, but distinctly American, offering a different viewpoint from that of mainstream Western media. Carlson, who took to the social media platform X to announce the interview, emphasized his intention to enlighten Americans on the conflict, noting the absence of Western journalists engaging with Putin to understand Russia's perspective. He critiqued the extensive coverage of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky by Western media, labeling it as uncritical and overly supportive, and stressed the importance of American awareness regarding the war's impact on global, political and trade dynamics. Carlson's departure from Fox News in April of the previous year followed closely after Fox's settlement with Dominion Voting Systems, amid revelations that Carlson's private opinions might significantly diverge from his public broadcast persona. This interview with Putin underscores Carlson's continued influence and the complexities of media narratives surrounding the Ukraine conflict. The sanctions imposed on Russia and President Vladimir Putin in response to the invasion of Ukraine are extensive and come from a broad coalition of Western countries and international bodies. They're aimed at isolating Russia economically, politically, and militarily. So let's take a look at some of the key sanction categories and their implications. Some of the financial sanctions on Russia include asset freezes and visa bans. Key Russian officials, including President Putin, have been subjected to asset freezes and visa bans, directly impacting their ability to operate internationally. Freezing the assets of Russia's central bank limits its ability to stabilize the ruble and access foreign reserves. This weakens the currency and fuels inflation, putting pressure on Russia's economy. Exclusion from SWIFT. Certain Russian banks were expelled from the SWIFT international payment system, significantly hindering Russia's ability to conduct international trade and access its overseas assets. Excluding select banks from the SWIFT messaging system significantly hinders Russia's ability to conduct international financial transactions, impeding trade, investment, and access to global markets, impacting both individuals and businesses. Capital market restrictions. Western nations have imposed restrictions on Russia's access to their capital markets, limiting the ability of Russian companies and the government to raise funds internationally. Economic sanctions handed to Russia include energy sector. Sanctions on the energy sector, including restrictions on technology and equipment that could be supplied to Russian oil and gas companies, aim to undercut Russia's critical energy revenue. Export controls. Comprehensive export controls target critical sectors of the Russian economy, including technology, defense, and dual-use goods, restricting Russia's access to essential goods and technology. Trade limitations. There have been bans on importing specific Russian goods into sanctioning countries, including luxury goods, and, more critically, Russian oil and coal, with phased timelines for implementation. Banning or limiting trade with Russia in specific sectors like energy or luxury goods aims to inflict economic pain and pressure the government. However, these measures can only harm ordinary citizens and raise energy prices globally. It's important to note that these economic restrictions are complex and their full impact is still unfolding. Their effectiveness depends on various factors, including the level of international cooperation, Russia's ability to find workarounds, and the resilience of its economy. There are diplomatic and political sanctions too, and these include suspension from international forums. Russia has been suspended or expelled from various international forums and organizations, including the G7 and the Council of Europe, diminishing its influence on the global stage. Sport and cultural bans. Russian athletes and teams have faced bans from international competitions, and there have been calls to limit or cancel cultural and academic exchanges. There are additional sanctions, many of which vary in impact and complexity, but some stand out as particularly challenging, such as defense and security. Sanctions on the defense sector aim to limit Russia's military capabilities by prohibiting the sale of arms and military equipment to Russia. Technology and research. Restrictions on high technology exports to Russia, especially those with potential military applications. These bans aim to cripple its military modernization and economic development in strategic sectors like aerospace and energy. However, their effectiveness depends on the extent of international cooperation and potential workarounds. Individual sanctions. Targeting Putin and his inner circle with travel bans and asset freezes aims to isolate them from the international community and pressure them to change course. However, the effectiveness of these measures depends on identifying and targeting all relevant individuals and their assets, which can be difficult. These sanctions are designed to exert pressure on Russia to cease its military activities in Ukraine by crippling its economy, degrading its industrial capabilities, and isolating it from the international community. The Russian government has responded by seeking alternative markets, bolstering domestic production, and attempting to circumvent sanctions through third countries. However, these sanctions have led to significant economic repercussions within Russia, including inflation, a weakened currency, and challenges in accessing global financial markets. The long-term effects continue to unfold, impacting not only the Russian economy, but also global markets, especially in the energy and grain sectors. Let's look at these sanctions in more detail. GDP contraction. The World Bank and IMF predict a significant decline in Russia's GDP for 2022 and 2023, ranging from 4 to 8%. This indicates a shrinking economy and reduced national output. Weakened ruble. The ruble initially experienced a sharp devaluation, but has since recovered somewhat due to capital controls and high energy prices. However, its stability remains fragile and inflation is still high. Trade disruption. Trade restrictions have hampered both imports and exports, leading to shortages of essential goods and equipment, as well as reduced foreign exchange earnings. Investment decline. Foreign direct investment has plummeted, limiting access to capital and hindering potential economic growth. Industrial slowdown. Sanctions on technology exports and restrictions on essential imports are impacting key industries like aerospace, defense, and automotive, leading to production slowdowns and potential long-term consequences. Impact on Putin. Of course, the sanctions have been aimed at Russia as a whole, but they also serve to create a narrower field for President Putin to exert power and influence. Political isolation. The sanctions and international condemnation have significantly isolated Putin on the world stage, weakening his influence and legitimacy. Domestic pressure. While the full extent is unclear, public dissatisfaction with the war and its economic consequences could create internal pressure on Putin's regime. Personal impact. Travel bans and asset freezes limit Putin's personal financial mobility and access to certain luxuries. The overall impact of sanctions is complex and varies depending on the specific measure and its implementation. Russia's vast energy resources and potential workarounds might mitigate some effects in the short term. However, long-term consequences on Russia's economic development and technological advancement are likely to be significant. That's it from the Global Insight for now. Please don't forget to leave a comment. We really want to hear from you and know what you think about the impact that these international sanctions are having on Putin and Russia. Will Russia retract their invasion in the face of sanctions, or are they hell-bent on annexing Ukraine regardless of the pressure it puts on the people of Russia? Let us know in the comments. Also, please like our video and subscribe for more great content on world affairs. And until next time, stay tuned.